back here on the Duncan Duo show, talking about the local real estate market, I have Arnie Diaz and David Diaz, the Diaz Duo at Waterstone Mortgage with me, talking about, in our last segment, we talked about Zillow Zestimates and how, inaccurate they can be and how accurate they can be, depending on the neighborhood, the conditions of the home, features and whatnot. But we started to get into a conversation I think is important for us to spend a little bit more time on, and it is that as prices have risen, as the market has improved, values are rising at a faster pace in some neighborhoods and areas. Now again, and in some price points. It's not rising in the $1 million homes.
No.
They're oversaturated. We're seeing discounting. We're seeing challenges in the $1 million home market, because it's just oversaturated, and I think a lot of people are attempting to cash out. But in mid-level price ranges, we're starting to see appraisal problems because values are increasing, or people, not necessarily values are increasing, but I think also people are being too ambitious. They say, oh, well, the last one sold at $3, well, mine's got granted, I want $319. And maybe a buyer pays that, but then it doesn't appraise.
Right, and the thing about it right now, people have to understand that appraisals are based on actual comparables of what has recently sold, and they have to go within a square mile. They have to be within a certain percentage of your square footage. There's a lot of restrictions that the appraisers have, so they have to find the perfect property that sold within the last 6 months to fit that sales price. And quite frankly, if you don't look at that, and you don't have the data for that, right now, people are willing to pay more money. Things are moving fast. So quite frankly, something that sold 6 months ago today is not quite. 6 months ago is a lot lower.
It's been appreciated, correct?
It's
prices
appreciated,
are high.
yeah.
But and I think again, what you have to understand is if it can't appraise, it can't sell unless you got cash, or unless someone will pay the difference. So,
right.
So if for example, it appraises a few $1,000s short, the buyer, if the lender will approve it and their debt to income will work and their reserves work, the buyer can certainly decide to pay the difference. But the likelihood of them doing that, and especially because they've been trained that that's a bad move, it's not the right call, by the media, that they shouldn't overpay for a home. The likelihood of a buyer doing that is relatively slim. I've personally done it. Primary residence that I bought, we bought a property a few years ago through our guaranteed sale that's my primary residence now. And interestingly enough, I wanted it so much, and I knew the market was so hot that I knew it wasn't going to appraise, and I didn't care because, I knew better,
Yeah.
and so, and I knew the neighborhood, and I knew the unique features, and it was the home I really wanted. So there are some people that will do it for the right property.
Right.
The likelihood of it, though, is slim.
Yeah, and then, when we've had those issues, again, we go back and we say, hey, can you give us some comparables that meet the price and be able to justify this, to go back to the appraiser, and 99 times out of 100, it's not that high, but 9 times out of 10, they come back with something, and it's a property that is not a comparable. It's
right.
It's outside the area.
They're stretching because they know the comps aren't there.
Exactly, yeah.
And I know at some point appraisers will give some appreciation adjustment. I mean,
Right.
they'll give a little bit of an adjustment,
Yeah.
but usually not as much of an adjustment as the market is showing that it needs.
Yeah, I think the rules for appraisers, and this may be something that not many people know, but the net adjustment, so they got pluses and minuses on a particular sale of what is different from the subject, but the net cannot be more than 10%.
Right. So they can't have huge adjustments,
Right,
or
yeah.
else then they're like, well, this really wasn't a comp.
Exactly.
And they need to be recent. I mean, from a standpoint of, the last few months, they usually like to see a sale in the last few months.
The rules say 6 months, but that's almost too long right now.
Right, 3 months, is probably where it should be.
Yeah.
And you see, like neighborhood within a certain radius, same county, same zip code. I mean, those are a lot of the things they'd like to see. What I find, sometimes troubling, and it's not as common anymore as it was a few years ago, but when you have an appraiser that maybe doesn't know the boundaries of school differences, and they use comps in a different school district. So obviously, as agents, we sometimes have to fight that battle where the appraisal came in short, and it's because the appraiser just made a mistake and didn't realize, hey, that's in this school district and this one's in this one, and they didn't know that because they came from a different county or whatever.
And that's a good point. I know a lot of realtors listen to this show, and not all of them are on your team, of course. But,
Right.
But your team actually does a good job of actually being the appraiser out there, which is something that if a realtor can do is highly recommended, because they not that there's going to be an influence of any kind of magnitude, but for those particular reasons, school zones, just making sure they know of every upgrade in the home, those kind of things can help.
They can. What's interesting though is sometimes there's a kind of a, I would say, a headbutting between realtor and appraiser, where appraiser almost feels like the realtor's there to tell them how to do their job. One of the things that we've had great success with, and this
I can't imagine that. That could be possible.
Arnie,
that never happens in the mortgage business.
So they butt heads, and it's kind of an adversarial relationship. Maybe the appraiser has been a realtor before, and now is an appraiser, or they don't like. I mean, it just happens, right? Because they know we're biased. So here is a ninja tip.
Oh, ninja tip. Okay, I was about to ask you for a ninja tip.
Ninja tips.
We need like a sound effect for that. Ninja tip. I tried that.
My ninja tip is that the seller should be there for the appraisal. See, and here's a couple reasons why. Number one is because, so if you're listening to this and you're working with another agent, shame on you. But no matter what, no matter who you're working with, if the appraisal is being done, not necessarily the home inspection, because the home inspection takes a while, and too many people there makes the buyer uncomfortable, it makes the inspector uncomfortable, it can get adversarial. But with the appraiser, I think a homeowner should be there, and there's a couple reasons why. Because I think it personalizes the transaction for the appraiser. They get to meet the actual party involved with the sale, who's proud of their home. So when the homeowner walks them through and says, here's my granite, here's this, here's that, it comes off as proud homeowner instead of realtor trying to sell the job.
Right.
And so the other side of it is, and I think this is just natural sales 101. When you're building a relationship with someone, any kind of common ground can be helpful. And I'm not saying that appraisers make their decisions about appraising a home based on anything other than the data in that home. They're looking at the data, they're looking at the features and all those types of things. But it's just common sense that if they had a good feel or a good vibe from the homeowner, and the homeowner didn't feel pushy, and homeowners just pointing out things, hey, I want to make sure you notice this. It's proud homeowner that they feel. It's not the realtor selling it. And I think, again, you'll sometimes find, we've had, what's amazing is we've had clients become friends with the appraiser. They found out they went to school, their kids went to school together, or they're big, fans of the same team or something like that. And let's just face it, I don't think anything like that can ever hurt. I'm not saying it helps, but I think it just makes for a more amicable, open relationship and discussion about, where the value is for the home. Because sometimes I think realtors, let's face it, there are a lot of realtors with egos. And they go out to the house, and and they're very confident that they priced it right and they know what they're doing. So it comes off as wrong.
They don't want on both sides.
Yeah.
The seller
and let's be honest,
Correct.
they don't want to look bad to the seller because this is what they thought that the price would be at and all this kind of stuff. So here's the other thing that people may or may not know this. Okay, as a mortgage professional, we have no influence over the appraisal. In fact, since the Great Recession, we're not even allowed to talk to the appraiser.
Right.
So who gets your ninja tip is huge because we can't talk to the appraiser.
And they don't know that. I think a lot of times they think, oh, well, it's your appraiser, it's your guy, and there's a lot of
random choice
because of the big, like you
Great
said, the big recession and the dive in prices. A lot of things changed with how appraisal management companies work and how lenders get to communicate with them, so that there isn't any of the illegal stuff that happened during the bust. And I think, again, those steps were great. Some people felt they went a little too far. I think they're great. It helps make people more confident and comfortable that the value is going to be there. But it does eliminate a little bit of professional discussion that a lender could normally have to guide and make sure they pay attention to certain pieces of data, whether there's an addition or, hey, make sure that you notice this, or whatever it is. So now it really does lie more today.
There is some of that, and we have to go through a liaison and all that kind of stuff. But we're not, we directly don't have access. In fact, if we try to have access to the appraiser, we get written up and big red flags, and before you know it, you're handcuffed and going to jail or something like that. I don't know.
Well, here's the other reason why I think it matters, right? You just and again, we've had this happen before. You have the ability. We obviously get the appraiser's information, and realtors have the ability to basically reject the appraiser and say that there's some sort of conflict. You don't have that ability, but we do through the seller. Could you imagine if you were going to appraise your ex-boss's home and you didn't like your ex-boss? You understand what I mean? There's ways like that where there's systems and checks and balances in place to make sure that it really is an unbiased opinion about the home, whether it's for the good or for the bad. And the seller being involved in that, I think is crucial. They meet the guy and they're like, hey, Andrew, we've had it happen. Hey, Andrew, this guy, I had an issue with this guy before, or, this, that, or the other, then it can help us resolve that problem for the client, and get a new appraiser and make sure that we're best representing.
Well, I think it's only fair because people may not know this, but the appraiser can reject the property, not
True.
They
True.
can reject not
They
to
can reject the job.
They
Yeah.
can reject the job.
Correct. Yeah,
I mean,
and I've heard that too, where
Well, yeah, they
appraiser
look at
says
it. It's got some, like we talked about Zillow just a second ago. If it's got a separate mother-in-law quarter, and they know it's going to be really hard to find comps and blah blah blah, they go, I'm too busy. I don't have time to research all that.
or there's a conflict.
Right.
Or the appraiser realizes, not just the seller, but the appraiser realizes and says, I can't appraise that person's home because of some sort of conflict. Maybe
Right.
they know whatever it is.
Right.
So those checks and balances are there for a reason, not just to protect the realtor and the seller, but also for the appraiser. They have a long list of codes that they have to follow, and rules and all those types of things too. So I think it's important that we not forget that
Right.
that there is an involvement from it. But my recommendation, we've had the best experience with the home seller being there and giving the home seller a little coaching about what to say, what not to say, but the home seller being there is
I know everybody's busy with their jobs and their lives and all that kind of stuff, but selling your house is kind of one of those big moments. And
right, it's one of the most it's the most expensive thing you're going to sell.
Right.
And
I
I
mean,
mean, unless you got like
make
some other collection or
Right.
it's probably the most expensive.
And a lot more people working out of the house these days. I know that for a fact. So
Right.
what? Wait for the appraiser. And
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree completely.